More and more e-commerce websites are choosing to accept Bitcoin currency as a form of payment, and the trend is even expanding its reach into physical stores through Bitcoin-enabled POS terminals. Add to this the exponential growth of crypto wallet users over the last 7 years and the pace with which the technology is evolving, and you can quickly see how suddenly accepting Bitcoin as a payment has a real case. Our guest today has a wild experience in e-commerce applications since 1990. Today, he's again on the verge of revolutionizing payments with his new project, OnePay. In our talk, we will explore the pros and cons of accepting cryptocurrencies, how to get started, and what to be aware of. Without further ado, please welcome Russell Castagnero.
Hello, Russell. Thank you very much for being here with us today. Welcome to the Online Crypto Summit.
Thank you, Victoria. I'm really excited about this. This should be fun.
So would you share a bit about your background and what excited you about blockchain and cryptocurrencies?
Sure. I've been in e-commerce for a long time. I cut my teeth in 1996. I worked on the AT&T Universal Card, their first website that allowed you to see your credit card purchases online in real time or near real time, and actually pay your bill and that kind of stuff. But what was really cool about that, in addition to that being cool enough, right, was that at the same time they were evaluating this thing called Mondex. And Mondex was a smart value card. And the reason they were so interested in it is because they were having a really hard time getting into Europe. At the time, they didn't have like phone lines everywhere, right? There wasn't a lot of copper wire phone lines that they could use. And so this would give them a chip-to-chip smart card ability to accept payments. And yeah, and so it blew me away, like all the things I learned. Mondex basically failed in the end. And I didn't really have a lot to do with it, but I learned about it first there, and I was really blown away. And then after that, I moved on to lots of different projects all over, and then got into startups in the like around 99, 2000, 2001, like with forcharity.com and Get to Hawaii, working on their e-commerce platforms to facilitate payment first for charities and then for a better way to do travel type stuff. I actually ended up moving from California at the time to Hawaii in '97 and started as the director of development for the company that had the contract for all of the states and counties in Hawaii e-government. And I then, about a couple of years later, I took over as president. And by the time I left, we were processing 2.1 billion in payments a year for the state. And so I got to know the payments industry far more than I wanted to, and far more than anyone should. It's like one of those sausage making, but it's like the sausage making of the sausage making. It's horrible. I found out that banks actually prefer paper checks over ACH or any other electronic payment method, which blew my mind. Totally blew my mind. And that credit cards were getting so afraid of fraud, they were implementing these really expensive compliance programs like the Payment Card Industry Digital Security Standards, otherwise known as PCI, which are extremely expensive to implement, not just because you have to use external auditors, but you have to use your own staff to be doing all these new controls. And they don't really do a lot to lessen fraud. Fraud hasn't gone down since they started doing this. It's just added headaches. And I realized if we're one of the best customers they have for this, how much harder it must be for smaller businesses that are trying to do commerce, and how much more confusing it is, and when they're changing the rules on them every year. And so I decided at that point, and this was around 2011, that after I finished fixing e-government in Hawaii, I was going to try and fix e-commerce in the world, which was kind of audacious, but that's really what I wanted to do. And then around 2012, we started talking at the state about working with marijuana companies, and they couldn't get banking. I was like, well, how are we going to accept payments electronically if they don't have a bank? And I ended up going and looking into cryptocurrency, and immediately realized this was not only the solution for high risk businesses like that can't get banking or underbanked, but really for everyone. it was, it's the perfect medium for it. Even back then, I realized it, and so I was looking everywhere for interesting ways to implement it in the States, and then after I left there, interesting ways to do it worldwide. So that's sort of how I got in.
Yeah, fascinating, really. So can you share a bit what makes it the perfect way to process transactions, and also why should any really forward-thinking stores start accepting cryptocurrencies today?
Sure. So the best way to think of it first is, the whole reason that me and my co-founder created WAMPay was because of this one fact, is that until cryptocurrencies came around, there was no way for an individual to pay another individual electronically without a third party. And in most cases, without at least 3 third parties, right? So, it's very rare that you can do a bank-to-bank ACH person-to-person. There's only a couple of banks that let you because they consider it a risk, right? So they'll use a third party, and so there'll be at least 3 parties involved. And then some people say, oh, well, what about Venmo? What about PayPal? Well, they're both closed-loop systems, right? You both have to have accounts on PayPal or on Venmo, and you both have to have bank accounts or credit cards that are hooked into them to use them. And those funds don't flow very quickly. They're actually pretty slow. And in most cases, there's a fee associated with that, a percentage fee associated with that money. If I was going to go, so in the United States, you give tips to waiters and waitresses that serve you and everything. And if I wanted to give a tip to that person, to my server, I would have to give a tip to the company via my credit card, and then they would, by their good graces, give that to my server, right, and take out the taxes and all that kind of stuff. Whereas with cryptocurrency, it'd be very straightforward for me to just scan their QR code and send them however much I want to send them. And there's no third party. It doesn't have to go through anybody else. And the speed at which the money goes through. So you can send funds. I can send a Bitcoin transaction to you, and you know that you've gotten it within 12 seconds. Right, and it's there and it's in your custody. You don't have to wait for it to settle. Here I know if I get a paper check, I have to wait 3 to 5 days before I can access those funds. That's crazy. It's crazy to think that our banking system, especially in the United States, can't settle funds faster than 3 days when you're talking about people with bank accounts. That's what I call a racket, right? That's not a bug. That's a feature for the bank, right? And in cryptocurrency, that's not the case. And the fees are, for what you get, the fees are so much less expensive and so far superior as far as service that they're the way to go.
Nice.
And
I thought that.
One thing I should mention is the other really huge thing that people don't realize is that when you pay with Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or Litecoin or any of those, every payment is a push, right? And since every payment is me, let's say I'm paying you, then you would give me your QR code, you'd send me your address or something, and I send the money directly to your address. So you don't have any of my payment information for someone to get on your Wi-Fi, which isn't protected well, and steal later, right? In the same way that even if you had a card reader, it goes through 3 different companies before it gets to the credit card company to do the validation of it, right? They don't have to maintain it because it's going directly through the network onto the Bitcoin blockchain and getting credited to your address. So there's no room for fraud there. You can steal people's Bitcoin, but you really can't steal their Bitcoin without their keys.
Yeah. But there is another layer to that, because there are still hackers attacking exchanges and wallets. So we still see that in the Bitcoin
That's
environment.
theft.
Yeah.
Right. That's theft, and you're always going to have theft. An interesting thing about exchanges, and I think we need exchanges. Those are great, but I don't recommend people keep their money in exchanges. Because those exchanges have custody of your funds. It's a lot like a bank account.
Yeah.
The money that you have in your bank account isn't really your money. You just have an agreement with the you have an agreement with the bank that you can withdraw funds from this account when they decide to let you, right? And it's the same sort of thing with a custodial exchange, right? You don't really have it. You don't have the keys. And what it means is that in the old days, the Old West, and you picture these people walking around and they're holding their cash under their beds, in their mattresses, or they're hiding it somewhere in their home. Well, they chose to move their money to banks that had big safes with big, thick metal walls and a big, because that was safer, right? Yeah. It took a significant amount of effort for someone to steal money from a bank more than to steal it from you. Well, now with more security, it's actually a lot more economical for a hacker to go after an exchange than it is to go after an individual, right? Because there's so much more money. It's a huge money.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes total sense.
You still use an exchange to go from one, to gain liquidity, or to move from one exchange to another, from one coin to another. But then you can pull your money out and have it back in your own custodial wallet, or non-custodial.
Absolutely. So can we speak about what drawbacks merchants still see when they make this decision whether to go with cryptocurrency, accepting crypto or not?
Well, I mean, I can give you the sort of the pluses and the minuses, because there are more. I mean, the fraud, even with the deployment of chip technology and everything in the United States, which has the best, 2.9% of all revenue, so that's like $3.1 billion, was lost to fraud.
Wow.
Okay, and that hasn't been going down. It's been going up, right? It's not going down as a result of new lame technologies that are supposed to solve all this. And that ends up getting passed on to the customer eventually, right? There's no way to get around it. And then fees, right? So if you're a business and you're taking fees that are, you know what your fees are. Your fees are going to be somewhere between 3 and 5% if you have good credit. And if you have, if you're a high risk or you have bad credit, it might be up around 8. If you have super high credit, if you can get credit card transactions at all, it might cost you 15%, which is a lot. So fees for accepting Bitcoin, if you're using like one of the big guys like a BitPay or Coinbase or something, you're going to pay 1/3 to 1/5 of what you would pay with a conventional credit card, right? So that's nice, right? If you use a non-custodial solution like WAMPay, like ours, you're going to pay maybe 95, like 5% of that. So you're going to save 95% of what you'd pay over a conventional one. So fees are a big one. Probably the second biggest one for them over fraud, though, is chargebacks, right? When you're accepting payments with a cryptocurrency, you don't have to worry about chargebacks, because since it was a push, there's not really a way for you to claw back, for anyone to claw back funds anyway. So that's a big plus. And of course, settlement of funds, right, happens much more quickly. Most of the vendors out there that are custodial solutions settle between 1 and 3 business days. If you use somebody like WAMPay, it settles within an hour. So you get access to your funds a whole lot faster. And a big advantage for unbanked or underbanked businesses is that they now can take part in e-commerce, because before, if you didn't have a bank, e-commerce was nothing. You couldn't take payments. So with cryptocurrency and using a non-custodial wallet like WAMPay, you can actually not have a bank account and accept cryptocurrency payments, both online and at the point of sale. Now, there is volatility, right? And volatility is always we call it the V word, right? So volatility is the number one question that I get when we're talking to potential customers. And one thing about volatility you have to remember is it goes both ways, right? Volatility doesn't mean it's always going down. And in fact, historically, if you look at Bitcoin over the last year, the last 365 days, it's gone up a lot more often than it's gone down, right? So So I have a spreadsheet where I check like the if you held on to your Bitcoin for one day before cashing out to US dollars, you would have made, depending on where it was, between 7 and 3% on that.
That's nice.
Yeah, but if you're taking credit cards, you're guaranteed to lose between 3 and 5%, 100% of the time. So you know that is the truth of it. That's the real truth, right? And there are ways to protect yourself from volatility. Somebody like a BitPay who could do this because they're custodial, they guarantee the amount of money that you got. So if you're a vendor and you work with them and you took a payment for $100, even though they may have processed the payment for $103, you're going to get $100 in the bank account when it comes through.
And that's an interesting approach because they're actually making money on the difference.
That's right. They're playing that float, and they own a lot of Bitcoin, so they can play that game.
You can do that, yeah.
Right. We prefer not to. We're not a money service business, and any non-custodial wallet is in the same boat. We're not playing on the currency markets. We're just providing basically software to allow anyone to leverage these great cryptocurrency technologies, so that they can do it themselves in the same way that you would with a cash register, with a cash drawer. You know, our software is really just a cryptocurrency drawer that you then put everything together, bundle it, and send it wherever you want to send it. Whether that's, you know, an exchange where it gets converted, or a debit card, or a hard wallet, or a paper wallet.
Well, another thing that I keep hearing that people are confused about is how do returns and exchanges work on the blockchain. How once you process that transaction, okay, how do you retrieve it back if there is a need to?
You know, this question, it's so interesting to me because it like reminds me every time I get it of how far away we've gotten from the way we, you know, from a cash economy, from using currency to do things, right, and move to a credit-based economy because everyone thinks of everything as credit, right? The way you handle a return or a refund is exactly the same way you'd handle it if it was cash. Right. So if you're unhappy with a product and you bought it from me, you don't go to the credit card company and say, hey, I don't like this, I want to charge it back. And then they say, okay, well, then they freeze the money, and then they say, okay, you should contact that company, and then they'll work it out. And then there's some contesting between the two, and somebody wins. Right. Instead, you come straight to me and say, hey, Russell, you know, I really didn't like that product because the chair leg broke. And I go, oh my gosh, do you want another one, or can I just send you a refund? And you'd say, well, I've had enough of this, I'd like a refund. And I just send it to you. I could send it to you in cash, a check, or in Bitcoin if I wanted to. So it goes back to being, you know, there is no intermediary in this transaction, right? So it's just like a cash transaction. If you went to a store and bought something with cash and then came back a week later and returned it, they would give you cash, or say we'll send you a check tomorrow, like that. So that
is that simple.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to refund anything. You don't have to, like, I was talking to a hotelier today, actually, a meeting with them, and they're like, well, what do we do if they paid for 10 days and they check out early and we decide to refund them that day? What do we do? I'm like, what do you do now? You know, if they paid, you know, it's not with a credit card, yes. So you can either refund that to them in cash, or you can refund that to them by issuing them a check, or you can give it to them in Bitcoin if you want. The stickiest issue with that is if you're going to give them back Bitcoin, you're going to use today's exchange rate instead of 9 days ago the exchange rate. But if you were working with euros and dollars, you'd be doing the same thing. You know, if I was at Hotel, you know, Petrova, and I paid in US dollars, you paid for it, but you use euros for everything, then you would give me my refund in euros, and I would suck it up and deal with it, right?
Well, yeah, but there's still this volatility thing that the difference might be really quite bigger than than the difference between euro and dollars. But of course, in this case, I guess it makes sense to keep the balance until the transaction is completed, meaning when the people complete their 10 days or less, keep that money aside and don't spend it, so that if something like this happens and they need the refund, you can just take it from there.
Right.
I guess. Yeah. Cool. So would you like to share a bit more about how should people get started accepting Bitcoin as payment?
Well,
And what other options actually they have other than Bitcoin? What other currencies they can accept currently?
I think that the first thing anyone that's really interested in playing around with this needs to do is to make sure that they know how a transaction works in a person-to-person way. And I don't mean buying a crypto on an exchange, because it's a different process. But you should download a non-custodial wallet, like Copay or Toast or Airbits, and use that. Download that so you have a software on your phone that has custody of your funds right there.
Or maybe a hard wallet even.
Well, hardware wallet's a lot harder to use, right? I think of a hardware wallet or a paper wallet is for long-term storage, but you don't really want, in the Bitcoin world, you empty out an address every time you use it. Right, so it's totally emptied, and then you get a new address every time. I like to keep my hardware wallet or a paper wallet is long-term storage, and I'm careful to protect whatever cash I have, just like I would be in my physical wallet. I don't keep more than a few $100s in my phone, on my wallet there, but I keep it protected. Just like I do with my wallet. So I would do that first to see how it works in the real world. And if you go to wampay.com, you can see videos of my kids actually doing transactions to show how easy it is. But that normally blows people away at how fast and how easy doing transactions is. And really people should do that first. And then if it fits into your business model, using a non-custodial solution like WampPay, like our software, is I think a great way to go, because you have the minimum fees, you have maximum control. You don't have to be beholden to a credit card merchant, a software provider, hardware that you've got that might be custom, and an acquiring bank. Right? You don't have to be beholden to those. You're in charge of it all. If you're in a business that doesn't want to mess with that, then you use a partner like a BitPay or a Coinbase, and they guarantee the amount, but they charge a bit more. And and it's actually pretty easy to make the switch. People are afraid because it's always talked in the news and everything about Bitcoin is this financial instrument, this esoteric financial instrument, really. And when you start using it firsthand, you realize what Satoshi's vision was, which was that this is electronic cash, this is internet money, and it's meant to be used for transactions, not really meant to be a hedge against other currencies deflating or the economy or any of that.
So would you recommend people to accept other currencies different than Bitcoin, or is there's quite a variety out there, and some of them exist as solutions? I know BitPay has a variety of coins, for example.
Sure. If you look at the coins that are not the volume that is not going into trades, so commerce-related transactions, I've heard numbers anywhere between 85 and 95%. So I'd say 90% of those transactions are happening with Bitcoin. About 5% are happening with Bitcoin Cash, and the rest are Dash and Litecoin and a few others. But really, there's not more than 8 or 10 cryptocurrencies that you want to take. And when you get right down to it, none of them is as easy for your customers to get as Bitcoin. There's Bitcoin ATMs. There's all the exchanges get it to you. None of them is easier. And when you're selling, you want to cast as wide a net as possible, right? Fortunately, there are companies out there like Shapeshift that make it really easy to convert from one to another. So, for us, as soon as there, is another currency that is widely held and has wallets that you can use, like I wouldn't even say Ethereum is a good one for a company to take with cryptocurrency, just because the wallets that I've seen have been awfully buggy. And the last thing you want is your customer cursing the wallet that they're using to pay you. You want it to be really easy, right? You want it to be easier than a credit card. And the Litecoin has good wallets. Bitcoin, obviously, Bitcoin Cash have great wallets. Some people like Dash. It's still not very widely accepted. Some people like Zcoin. There are some other ones that are out there, but if your customer base doesn't already have that, it's going to be a lot easier for them to get Bitcoin.
So what currencies do you currently support at OnePay?
Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash.
Bitcoin and Bitcoin. Are you planning on adding any others than that?
What I tell our customers all the time is, if anybody comes in with a wallet and wants to spend another cryptocurrency, you let me know what that is, and we'll put that on the list. And as of yet, we had beta customers since September, or since last year June. We launched in November, and nobody has asked to take additional cryptocurrencies, other than as curiosity, like, oh, can I use Ether? It's like, well, no. You have a wallet, you could pay Ether. Oh, no, but I have Ether on an exchange. Well, having it on an exchange is not having it in a wallet that you can spend.
Yeah, it doesn't even make sense.
Right. Like, oh, I'm gonna trade my Potcoin for, that doesn't make sense.
So how easy it is to get started with OnePay? Let's say that I want to start using it right away. What should I do other than having my wallets and all that set up?
It's actually really easy for most customers. They just go online and fill out our form, and then we'll send them an information sheet where they can get everything up and running. We have a solution. Depending on where you live, some things are more highly regulated, but we have what we call a 50-state solution. It's legal almost everywhere that cryptocurrency is acceptable, where we actually deploy to your Amazon instance the software. It runs for you, and if you want to hold that as Bitcoin or hold it as US dollars, we'll work with you to connect to the third party that will take care of that conversion. We're not a money services business, so we don't have custody, so we don't do that. But we work with any of them. So like if you're in Europe, we can hook you into Bitstamp, or if you're in the United States, Uphold or Coinbase or Genesis or any of those exchanges if you want to do something there. Or there are a lot of debit cards that are funded with cryptocurrency. We have some of our merchants actually just feed directly into those so that they can just go spend them on the Visa network. And we have others that just have them go to paper wallets. It's really, we don't force anyone into doing it that way, but doing it our way. Our way is whichever way is best for the customer. But getting set up and everything normally it takes us about a day and a half to get you up and running.
So in a matter of technicality, how that works on my website?
So we have some plugins. So like the one that's most popular is for WooCommerce on WordPress.
Nice.
And so basically you set up your WooCommerce instance. You download the OnePay plugin, install it, and give it the parameters that you need for your URL and merchant user credentials, and you're up and running. And you tell us when you set it up for you, you tell us what currency you want to take. In other words, do you want to do conversions from euros or dollars or what have you? And do you want to take Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin? And then you're up and running.
Oh, nice. So then naturally my next question would be how secure it is to use a third-party solution for taking payments, and are there any considerations that people should be aware of?
Absolutely. So as I said before, if someone else has your keys, then your money's not secure,
Hmm.
right? So, how, there are a lot of solutions out there that are non-custodial. Where they are custodial, that means that they take custody of funds, they'll hold it for some time, and then either give you an account that you can move it, or they'll automatically move it to an address that you give them. Right? So you can give them address on your hardware wallet, and funds go flowing, or to an exchange account, whatever it is. And so that time, that in between when they're sending it to you and and they have it, is when it's out of your custody and it's at risk.
Hmm.
Right. So so in our solution, our software actually does not have the keys. So the only person that has it is the person who's the administrator. And those keys are what you use to move those funds as often as you want from your wallet on Amazon to wherever the main location is that you want it. So that's why we use this sort of cash drawer analogy. We don't have access to your cash drawer. It's always in your possession. I think that's really what you want to make sure. There are, and I want to name them by name, but there are a number of custodial solutions out there who try to compete with the big guys like Bitcoin on price, but they don't have the security implemented that those other vendors do.
Hmm.
Right. So you have to always consider that if you're going to go non-custodial. I think is the best way, but there are reasons why you might not want to. If you want to go with one of the big guys, you want to just make sure that that they're being that their security measures match what you're expecting.
Cool. So as we are coming to a close, would you like to share what's your outlook on the what to expect till the end of the year in terms of e-commerce adoption? Any other trends that you would like to share your thoughts on?
So I'll go on an edge here and say that I think that by the end of 2018, that cryptocurrency payments will be poised to be 1% of payments coming through. So like maybe by December, 1% of December's payments will be coming in via cryptocurrency, and the vast majority of those will be Bitcoin. As far as 2019 goes, I think it'll be up to 5% easily by the end of 2019, and that's a kind of growth that's really that's really remarkable. And the biggest reason for this, of course, is that 90% of worldwide consumers don't have access to banking. And if you look at what kind of amazing things they're doing, just trading minutes and stuff like that in Africa and in South America, you can see that this is a solution that everybody's been waiting for, and there's not really any holding it back. So I think it's going to grow. I think as far as Wampay goes, like you got me saying the wrong name. As far as Wampay goes, I think we're going to have 50 customers by June. And we'll be poised to grow significantly, maybe by the following June, to have as many as 500. So I'm really excited about that. And we're working on some strategic partnerships with various platforms and sort of big box sort of plays that should be really exciting. So I'm bullish on Wampay.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Russell, for this conversation. I'm sure it was very helpful for everyone who is considering accepting payments in Bitcoin. And I also think that this number will be growing. So thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Victoria. I really appreciated the opportunity. And to everybody else, remember, there's no reason you need to be held back by the tyranny of merchants, and e-commerce should be for everybody.